Hi, ladies. I said to Rose, you may have a couple people faint when they realize I was able to talk all this time. So I'm having a good start. Okay, so the Bible study that we'll be doing in the spring is based on a book called It's Not Supposed to Be This Way. And we've all felt that. We've all had moments, or some of us have had lifetimes where we said our life isn't supposed to be this way. So when I saw that title, I was like, I gotta get my hands on this. So the book, as you can tell from the title, it's about disappointment and how God wants us to process disappointments in our lives. Wow. And the book is by Lisa TerKeurst, if anyone's heard of her. So that's what the study will be about. So today I'm just going to share some of what we'll learn from the study and just give you an idea so that you'll know what will be coming up. So first I'll start with a kind of a definition of disappointment, the different levels of disappointment. So we have small disappointments in our lives. They're very frequent. They could be daily. Something like if you run out of gas, or you get a bad haircut, or you have a missed opportunity. Those are small, frequent disappointments that happen in our lives. And we can get past them, with a little bit of time, we get past those disappointments. The next level are what I call the medium type of disappointments, which I refer to as the broken moments. Now, have you ever dropped something, and like a vase, and you've seen it break into big chunks, where you can say, you know what, I can pick up the pieces and glue it back together. You can visualize steps where you can say, I see the pieces, they can be mended, I can go back to what I knew was normal if I take these steps. So what I say of an example of a medium broken disappointment is like a job loss. You lose your job, but in your mind you can still visualize, if I do my resume, I apply for a job, I can get a job, I can go back to normal. You're able to visualize steps in your head on how you can go back to normal. Now, the big moments, which the book refers to as dust moments, so I'm going to refer to it as that for the remainder of the time today. But say you drop a vase and it doesn't break into those big pieces. It shatters into dust. There are no steps to put it back together. Those are the shattered moments of our lives where you can't visualize steps to fix it.
Come on.
And examples of that is a death in the family. There's no steps you can take. A scary health diagnosis, or betrayal of a spouse. You can't visualize the steps in your head to fix that. And when that happens and you can't visualize it, it's not so easy to trust God.
That's right.
Because we tend to think, you know what, if God's not going to be there for me, I can at least see some steps to do it myself. That's what we tend to do.
Come on. Right.
So it's not that easy to trust God when these moments happen, but they're the most important. They don't happen often, these dust moments. They're infrequent in our lives. Maybe we have a handful, but they're the most important even though they don't happen often. And that's because when these tragedies happen, it causes us to question our faith. That's why they're the most important. They don't happen often, but they cause you to question your faith. Not only that, I've seen people permanently walk away from the Lord because they'll say, well, why did God let this happen to me?
Come on.
What kind of a God would do this? I'm not serving this God that did this to me.
Amen.
And I've seen people walk away from God because of these moments. These big moments, they also will reveal who you are in God. You will find out quickly if your foundation was on sand or if your foundation is on a rock.
Come on.
And that's why these moments are important, that we need to talk about them. It also makes you very vulnerable to the enemy because he knows you're starting to question, is God real? And the enemy's like, okay, I'm going to step in and I'm going to try to take control of this situation. But as we'll find out in the class, God specializes in dust.
Yes, he does.
Because he can't repair it. He doesn't want to repair it. He wants to build something brand new out of the dust. And he will build it. So you don't want to wait for tragedy to strike to find out what your foundation is. You need to know what the word says ahead of time before it strikes. And we'll learn about all that in the class. Okay, so we talked about there's small, medium, and large disappointments. I now want to talk about what causes the disappointments. So, the first cause of disappointment is problems placed on us, which means the sin of others causes disappointment in our lives. And an example of that is if there's someone in your family that gambles or has a drug addiction, that causes disappointment for everybody that's in that person's life. Another cause is problems placed within us, which is our own sin causes disappointment in our lives. So an example of that is if you have an envious spirit and you're always coveting everything else, or things aren't good enough, what you have is not enough for you, that's going to cause big disappointments in your life. So other sin, your own sin, that's what's causing the disappointments. Now the third one, I haven't heard this before, but after this study, it just came alive to me in a way that it never did. I don't know why I never paid attention to this before. There are disappointments in our lives that are placed on us by God. And I've heard that before, but I never really understood it until I dug into what that meant. So I'm going to give you two examples, and I'll explain why it stopped me in my tracks for some reason. One example is the job loss example. Say God has a bigger, better job for you, that He knows there's more pay, but you don't want to leave your current job because you're scared. You don't want to leave your comfort zone. Sometimes God will remove the stumbling blocks in our lives, and it feels like a disappointment, because you're like, why would you take this away? I felt safe and comfortable, but He's like, well, you aren't stepping into what I asked for, so I removed what was blocking you. That's a disappointment. Seems like a disappointment that's placed on you by God. Now the second one, this is the one that really just stopped me in my tracks. And we've all heard this before. It's about the blind man. So John 9, 1 through 3. As he went along, he saw a blind man from birth. And his disciples said to him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? And Jesus said, it wasn't his parents, they didn't sin, and he didn't sin. But this happened to him so that the works of God might be displayed.
That's right.
Now, this is a man that was blind from birth, not a boy. He had a lifetime of disappointment, a lifetime of being blind. And it wasn't because of anyone's sin. It was placed on him because he was handpicked to display the works of God.
Yes.
Now, I believe because he spent half of his life blind and half able to see, it developed unique characteristics in him for his calling, a unique calling that was specific to him. Now the reason this stopped me in my tracks, most of you don't know this, but I was born severely deformed in both feet. Severely. I'm like wheelchair bound if I didn't have surgery done. And for the first 30 years of my life, I've been through 7 reconstructive surgeries to build them back into something that resembles a foot so I can walk. So years of physical therapy and learning to walk, and I never saw this verse in that way, and it made me question I'm 40 now, 40 years of living with this disappointment, saying, it's not supposed to be this way. I mean, having this lifelong disappointment, and it always made me feel like I was less of a person or less of a woman because I'll never be able to wear high heels. So imagine a 40-year-long disappointment. And then I read this verse for like the 100th time, and I was like, wait a minute, is there a chance that I was handpicked? And it just made me question, has it developed special characteristics in me for my unique calling? And I can't say 100% yes, God handpicked me and that's why I was born this way, but I'm going to choose to live that way. I'm going to choose to live so I've been handpicked. I'm going to minister to anyone that He puts in my path until my last breath. Because I know that there's a chance that I was handpicked and I'm going to choose to live that way. So what I ask is, when you go home, really stop and think, are there disappointments in my life that maybe were placed on me? Ask yourself, did this disappointment make me stronger and better and wiser? Did it equip me? Because if the answer is yes, it's probably a disappointment you need to let go of. I'm just now letting go of this 40-year disappointment I was never supposed to carry. But it took me 40 years to let it go. And I know that there's women here, you have disappointments you're supposed to let go of. Let it go. You're handpicked. Even if you don't know for sure, live like you were handpicked.
Amen. Amen.
there's a quote from the book that I wrote down that says, "What if the worst parts of your life are actually gateways to the very best parts that you never would have do that?" And we all have examples of that. And if you can say, yes, you know what, that's true, that's a disappointment you need to let go of.
Say that again, please.
What if the worst parts of your life are actually gateways to the very best parts that you would never want to do without? Okay, James 1, 2 through 4. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know the test of your faith produces perseverance. Now, I'm going to be very honest, this verse never sat well with me, which is a weird thing to say about a verse in the Bible, but it turns out I didn't understand what it meant. And now when I read it, it's a source of strength and peace and confidence. And I want to kind of break it down for you ladies, because if there's anyone else out there that this verse doesn't really sit well with you, because in the DVD, when we do the study, the author, she says the same thing. And I was like, there's someone else that this verse is not because it's saying consider it pure joy when you face trials. And I'm like, is this saying I'm supposed to be happy in the dust moments? Am I supposed to be happy in the broken moments? That can't be what this is saying, or the author doesn't know what it really feels like to go through a dust moment. So I then went on this whole thing where I had to study the word joy. What does this word joy really mean? So I'm going to take you guys through that. So joy, as I found out, is not the same as happiness. A big shock to me. Happiness is an emotion. Joy is a choice, unrelated to your emotions and your circumstances. And you can choose joy in the midst of your storm. That doesn't mean the storm goes away, but you can choose joy in the midst of it. And that was another big revelation to me.
Praise God.
Another fact I found is joy does not need a smile to exist. It's an attitude of the heart. Choosing joy doesn't mean that you don't hurt, that you don't feel sad. It just means that you know it can't keep you hostage.
Yes.
Now, when I finished my study that I was doing on joy, I finally understood what the word meant. And this is what the Lord showed me. He gave me like a visual of the word joy that I want to share with you. So I'm very big into puzzles, like jigsaw puzzles, where you have to connect the pieces to make a big picture. So what I see is our lives are a jigsaw puzzle. And every piece in the puzzle represents a different event in our lives. The good events and the bad events. Any event is a new puzzle piece added into your puzzle. And what I see is the puzzle pieces, some people take glue and they'll put it in the crevices to keep the pieces together so that they can hang the picture when they're done. But what I see, our lives, our puzzle pictures are glued together with gold. There's gold woven in between the pieces. And what the gold represents is that the pieces are divinely connected. Wow. So what he showed me is, say in my puzzle there's an event that happened where my car broke down. And then because my car broke down, there's another puzzle piece added where I had to go to a mechanic in the waiting room. That's another event in my life. Now, in that waiting room, I could maybe strike up a conversation with somebody in that waiting room. Maybe that person was on the fence if they should go to church. And because I was kind enough just to say hi and chat with them, and I mentioned I went to church, they went back to church. I might not know any of this. And we don't know. That could then trigger events in his life where he goes to church, maybe his family gets saved, maybe several generations of his family get saved. We don't know everything God is orchestrating. But when we trust him, he will make those puzzle pieces in your puzzle and connect them divinely in a way that we will blow our mind if we even knew what he was doing with those puzzle pieces. So, any event in your life that the enemy means to destroy you, God can take it and move it in your puzzle and strategically place it somewhere else in that puzzle so that it triggers a different set of events for your good. Not the events that the enemy meant for you. And we won't know all the good he orchestrated until we see the completed puzzle at the end. And I believe he's going to show us what our lives look like, and we're going to see oh my gosh, that's what you did at that event? That's what you did? I had no clue. That's why you allowed that happen. That's the good you made come out of it, because he doesn't always share with us. We won't know all of the good on this side of eternity, actually. We just have to trust that he is building that bigger puzzle. So it will all make sense one day, ladies. I promise you that. And I believe when we do come to the end of our lives and he says, this is the puzzle, this is what your picture looks like, it's going to be a masterpiece on levels that we had no clue. And he's going to say, when you were blinded by pain and fear, you trusted me to guide your steps. And when you saw no plan and no purpose, you still trusted me. Look at the masterpiece I built with your life because of your faith. That's what the word joy means. That's what I see now in my head when I think of joy. It's not joy that your loved one died. That's not what it meant. It meant there's joy that he's arranging the puzzle, that there's a bigger picture being built, and he's going to take it and place it in the puzzle so that a whole set of events happen that glorify his kingdom. Amen. The pieces will fit the way they're supposed to. It's saying, Lord, I trust you to redeem this and return it to me as part of my testimony. That's what choosing joy looks like. So, for me, I did have one of these dust moments in recent years, and for most people that this happens to, it sets off a whole event of puzzle pieces in the picture that leaves everyone totally decimated. It should have destroyed my life and everybody around me. But my God said, no, no, no. I'm moving this piece somewhere else. And he set up a set of events in my life with that puzzle piece that led me here to speak in front of you. So that's what choosing joy is. Choosing is an attitude of the heart. Okay, so, sorry. I was online looking on Facebook, and I saw a quote that, and again, this is another thing I'd seen a million times, but after this study, I just see things so differently now. There's a quote I saw on Facebook that I've seen so many times, and it gripped me. It gripped me, and I had to dig into it. The quote said, "Are you buried? Or are you planted?" Now that's one of those cliche things that you hear all the time, but when I read it this time, I broke down in tears. Because I was flooded with, I'll share with you. So, to me, I feel this saying captures the essence of what we're going to learn in the class. So, planted, when you're planted, you're in darkness. So think of a seed being planted on the ground. It's in darkness. But when you're planted, it's darkness with purpose. It's pain with purpose. Now, when somebody plants something, there's someone that's nurturing it. There's someone that's taking care of it. There's someone that's making sure it has enough water and sunlight. And when you're planted, that's how God treats us. He's nurturing us in the storm. We're still in the darkness. We're still in the pain. But he's nurturing you so that when you bloom out of the ground, you're going to be bigger and better than when you went in. That's what it means to be planted. The reason I started crying is because I started thinking about the buried. And when you're buried, it's the same darkness, but there's no purpose. It's a place of hopelessness and loneliness. It's a place where you feel like, what if this darkness and pain is permanent? What if I never see daylight again? And how many people, millions of people, feel that way? That's why there's so many people on drugs and alcohol, because they're desperate just for a moment where they don't feel the pain. Because if you think it's permanent for the rest of your life, you're going to be desperate for anything that makes you forget for a moment or numbs you for a moment. I get it now. I guess I didn't see before why there was such a big drug epidemic, but for some reason reading this quote, it just brought this whole other level of compassion that I just started weeping when I saw this Facebook quote that I had seen so many times before. They don't know they have the option of asking someone to change them to be planted, so that they know they're going to bloom and see daylight again. They don't know that.
That's right.
And what we'll find out in the class is compassion to others plays a very big role in how God wants us to process our disappointments. There's a big connection there, and we're going to go deeper into that in the class. So we're going to learn, how does God do this? How does he take you from buried to planted? What does he do when you're planted? How do you know that God is nurturing you? How do you know that? What is his role? What is his promises when you're planted? When you're in the middle of a storm? What does he promise? And what is our role, most importantly? We have a role that we have to fulfill as well as the planted object. If the seed's not willing to absorb the nutrients or absorb the water and the sunlight, it's not going to grow and bloom. We have our own role that he expects of us on how we're supposed to manage the disappointments in our lives. And we're really going to get into that in the class. So, realistically, what is God asking of us in these moments? In the broken and the shattered moments? What is he asking? What about when you're hurting so bad you don't know how to pray? What is he expecting of you? What about days where you can't even get out of bed? Realistically, what is God asking of you when you have those hard days? Is he asking you to just get up and be joyous and do a marathon? He's not. And we'll learn exactly what he's asking of us. But let me share this with you. In Luke 22:44, when Jesus was in the garden before he was crucified, it says, "And being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground." And in Matthew 26:38, it says, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death." He knows what those dust moments feel like. Does that not sound like the ultimate example of a dust moment?
Yes.
He knows. When you can't get out of bed, he knows exactly what you're feeling. And he's not going to ask you to get up and run a marathon and jump up and rejoice, because he knows. He was filled with sorrow. And the reason I bring this up is because there are women that I hear say, well, I don't want anyone to know that I'm struggling. They're going to think I'm less of a Christian if I'm not smiling all the time. That's not true. If you're struggling, tell a friend. Tell someone that's going to encourage you and remind you, Jesus felt sorrow to the point that he was to death. It's okay if you feel sadness. That doesn't mean you don't trust God.
That's right.
But what did Jesus do in that moment? He prayed and said, okay, your will, not mine.
That's right.
And by him saying that, it was saying, okay, Lord, I trust that there's a bigger picture being assembled. You're putting together a bigger puzzle.
Yes.
I trust that you're going to give me the grace to get out of this, and I know I will see daylight after this.
Amen.
He chose joy in his heart in the middle of the sorrow. The sorrow didn't just disappear. I'm sure he was still afraid. But in his heart, he chose joy. That's the ultimate example of choosing joy. Now, yes, most of the time I would say joy is accompanied by happiness and smiles. But it also looks like this. So do not feel guilty if you have a day where you feel sad, or or the disappointment feels like it's weighing on you. It's a choice of the heart. It doesn't mean you have to force a smile on your face. Remember what Jesus did. That's the example that we can follow when we have these dust moments. So we're going to learn in the class how to wisely live through these disappointments, so that we can be refined for our calling. And there's another quote from the book that I want to read. Sometimes to get your life back, you have to face the death of what you thought your life would look like. And sometimes to get your life back, you have to face the death of what you thought your life would look like. We all have to do that. We all have to do that. And I'll say that we are short-sighted, so that's why we say it doesn't look the way it's supposed to look. There's sin, and we only see what's happening now. So it's fair if you say, yeah, it's probably not supposed to be this way because we're not needed anymore. But God is not short-sighted. He sees the completed puzzle now.
Yes.
And he is going to arrange the pieces so that in the end, our lives will look exactly the way it was supposed to be.
Amen.
So in a minute, I'm going to ask if the DVD can be played. It's a 5-minute intro to the class. But before they play that, I just want to say, after I read the book and I did the study, it was like I was given a brand new set of eyes. I don't know how else to explain it, but it's like now I read things or see things or hear things and they grip me. It grips me to the point that I have to run and study it. I have to run and read it and see what God says about it before the grip lets go of me. I've never experienced anything like that. I hope it never goes away. But that came out of this study. That's how I went through this study. That's why I text Rose. We have to do this. So, please come out for the class in the spring, and you will leave with fresh revelations that are specific to what you're going through.
Amen.
Feeling that circumstances should be better than they are. Relationships should be better than they are. Life should be better than it is. It's like our expectations are here and then our experience is here. And the distance between those two is the fertile soil of disappointment, where fear, disillusionments, and doubts about the goodness of God grow wild and fierce. Disappointment is a feeling we all have, but very few of us know how to process it, what to do about it, and most importantly, how to find God's goodness and wisdom in the midst of it. Disappointment comes in varying degrees of pain. Sometimes we struggle over small disappointments, like a crazy haircut or a missed opportunity. But other times, the disappointments are much more disillusioning and sometimes even devastating. A friend that suddenly goes silent. A child that starts to make decisions so opposite from the way you raised them. A job loss without any new possibilities on the horizon. A betrayal from someone you thought was completely trustworthy. Financial debt that feels inescapable. A terrifying medical diagnosis. Or the sudden death of someone you love so much you don't know how you'll go on without them. The list of disappointments, big and small, well, they're endless. And we've all experienced our fair share of things not turning out the way that we thought they would. So what do we do about it? How do we live the joyful and abundant Christian life when we're so afraid of the next unexpected hardship and heartbreak? And why would our loving God allow all of this hurt? These are questions I've certainly wrestled with personally in intense ways. I've suffered some of the most devastating heartbreaks of my life right here at this kitchen table, on the couch that you see behind me, and just in my home. So that's why I'm recording all of these sessions where I do life. Now,